Thank you for joining me for another podcast episode of Hanging with Mr. Francis. I'm your host, Mr. Francis, and this is episode 10, Social Media Disorder. So, I felt like this episode was somewhat needed based on the things I've noticed. But before I begin, so last year in 2021, there was an episode that I recorded, which was basically a quick situation around mental health. I did go through a little bit of a hiccup in that realm of things where I had a bit of a mental health episode. Now, give or take, we are going through some crazy times right now, and what was supposed to be something that I didn't really think much of turned out to be something that I needed to address. And it took me some time to sit back and analyze things, but I was able to get a moment to realize that I was going through a little bit of something. And I think the first step is normally when these things happen is to actually acknowledge that you're going through something like this and then handle it, or try to analyze it and see how it is and what's affecting you, and take a step back and just reshuffle things in your life. And in that moment, I realized I was going through something, and talking to other individuals, like I said in the episode. Again, the episode isn't on YouTube, but if you ever was listening when my podcast was strictly on Mixcloud, it was a separate episode that I did. It was a segment I called On My Mind, and I'm going to try to bring that back. But this episode, where social media disorder, is one and the same with that. And I think social media has caused such a crazy situation right now with mental health. And the problem is, not a lot of people are accepting the fact that, they're going through something during these times. And when you're going through something, sometimes you're so in denial about it, or not in denial, but denial about it. And you don't really take the time to realize that, maybe part of the problem is social media. A lot of people have spoken about it, saying stuff like, when you see other people's lives, they look perfect online, and a lot of people based a lot of that stuff, the bullying and all that things. But from what I've noticed, and I've took some time to observe since that episode I did about mental health, and I took a step back and observed a lot of things on social media, whether that's people I know or just overall, accounts on social media and the way people interact and so forth. And what I've come to realize is that there is a lot of people going through some mental health issues, and it shows online, but I don't think they realize it. Now, I'm not here to judge people, saying that, people are crazy or whatever it may be, but it's clear as day. And I think there was even a Netflix show about something like this, of how social media has, preyed upon the mental health of people because of the profits and so forth. And there was like a whistleblower and so forth with young kids and teenagers and so forth. And I'm a firm believer of that. And you can, if you take a step back, because sometimes when you're in the midst of something, you don't realize it. But if you take some time to remove yourself and observe for a bit of time, you start to notice a pattern. And I started to notice the pattern ever since this whole lockdown situation happened. Now, not right away, but mostly when I went through the episode that I went through in regards to mental health. And the thing is, when social media first started back in 2006, Facebook, I think, I don't remember the exact year, but to the mid to late 2000s, social media was great. It's still great today. It's very entertaining. There's a lot of things that I love to enjoy on social media, but there's so much hate. There's so much things people are trying to do for profit, for attention, mostly attention. That's what I've noticed. And back when social media started, there wasn't that much focus on attention. People were just enjoying it because it's this new thing, and they were just, very entertained by how amazing this new thing that has come about is in the realm of the internet. Fast forward to 2022, where we are right now, and you can see clearly that something is going on. Again, I'm not judging or anything like that. It's just me speaking out loud about what I see and what I've noticed. And as I mentioned, what I've noticed is a lot of mental disorder going on in the realm of the social media atmosphere. And it's quite sad. And as I said, it's entertaining, no doubt. It's a great space to be in. It helps business-wise, which for me now, I look at social media as something that's more of an entertainment and also something to help business. On the personal level, it's still good, but I start to realize a lot of people have put so much focus into social media that they don't realize they've fallen victim to a lot of the BS that is online. For example, I don't tend to share a lot on social media because I don't need the algorithm to know a lot about me. And there is an algorithm out there that is just basically always studying you. Now, I don't have the information to lay that out, but again, if you observe long enough, you'll realize it. And I said this before, that our cell phones know more about us than we know about ourselves, which is another wild thing in itself, which I will get into in another episode. That's a topic for another day. But it's very troubling when you realize that social media has become a place where it's all about your data. It's what these businesses prey on, and they keep feeding you more of what it is that they see that you like. And it's almost as if it's a drug. It keeps you coming back for more. And it's not really almost as if it's a drug. It is a drug. And I fall victim to it a lot sometimes where, for example, when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is you check social media. That's not fucking normal. And a lot of us do it, whether we want to admit it or not. Or the other thing is posting to social media a lot. I've noticed a lot of people will post it's crazy if you post more than 10 things in a day. Now, give or take, if you're a private profile, you have a certain amount of followers, that's cool and all. But it's weird to me when I see how do people follow over 1,000 accounts or over 3,000 accounts? What's the purpose? What's the purpose of following that many accounts? You can't keep up with all of them. Let's be real. You cannot keep up with all of them. And it's a weird space right now. And as I mentioned, it's very entertaining when it's ready to be, very informative. But it's reached that place where it's obviously, when you run a business on it, your currency is the amount of eyes you have on you, the amount of followers, because then you can reach out to a lot of people to grow your business and so forth, which, it helps your business become a lot bigger as time goes on, right? But the consequences are outweighing the benefits of it. Because 10 years ago, I used to say, man, I can't imagine what the world will be like 10 years from now. And here we are. And 10 years ago would have been 2012. The whole thing, the world's going to end. Obviously, it didn't. Here we are 10 years later. Not that I believed in that shit, but it's just, if you can remember how things are 10 years ago till now, you can clearly see it's gotten a lot worse. In some aspect, it's gotten better if you're able to turn profit using the platforms of social media. It definitely helps. but at the same time, it's caused more bad than good. And because a lot of it is happening so fast paced, you don't realize it. For example, I got off Facebook about almost 10 years ago. Actually, 10 years ago, and I came back on in 2015, but I disabled it again. Just recently went back on, and it's a different place. There's videos on there, and I'm watching them, and I'm like, what am I watching? Like, is this what people find entertaining? And as I said, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of entertaining things on social media. Like people started careers off of that, like, entertainers and stuff like that. But it's gotten to a place now where it's like people just make videos for no reason that doesn't make any sense, all because they want you to view their shit. And it's borderline psychotic. Let's call it for what it is. And there's such a disorder within the space that if it's this bad now, I am going back to what I said. I can't imagine 10 years from now, much less 5, to be quite honest with you. I see a lot of people are suffering mentally, and they don't realize it. They literally don't realize that they're suffering mentally. I don't want to get into the aspect of how and things I notice, but people, I'll give you one quick example. People seek attention. Like, when you do so many things to seek attention from people yet you barely even know online, I again, people are gonna, whoever's listening might hate me for saying this, but this is my opinion. But when you seek more attention from those in actual reality, like people in the physical world, when you seek it more online through social media, I think it's a form of mental health. Because you're seeking that validation from people online, and you've made it your number one priority to do that because you're not receiving that much attention in the real world. So you need to seek it online. And a lot of us seem to be lying to ourselves to think otherwise, right? And it goes back to what I said about waking up in the morning, you're checking social media to see what's going on in the world. Like, it's one thing to check what's going on in the world, but then it's like, you look at the fact that it's the first thing you go to. And as I said, I fall victim to this plenty of times. I'm not excluding myself from this shit. I've done it to myself. And there is a time when I put the phone down for a good chunk of time, and I felt good. And I think a lot of us need to do that, but it's become that drug to us in this regular society that we don't seem to realize that it's taken over our lives. And it's a perfect segue into what I'm going to say next, is that the ultimate goal of this whole social media thing is a social credit score and the whole metaverse thing, right? Because going back to what I said, people are putting themselves so immersed in getting reactions from people online that they don't even care about reactions in real life. Like, you may still care about reactions in real life, but at the same time, you've created a second world in your head that online really matters. And it really doesn't. Again, this is my opinion. I just don't feel it matters unless you run a business and you care about people and what they say, and your whatever product you're selling or whatever business you're running. Sure, because then that sees how you're engaging with your audience in regards to what it is that you're doing as an entrepreneur and so forth. Like, for example, if people came to me and say some things about like the podcast, stuff like that, obviously there's going to be a good feedback and there's going to be bad feedback, and those analytical stuff, yes, you definitely got to look into that. But when you go through certain hardships in life and then you go online to seek some type of clarity or whatever, that's not good. So doubling back to what I was saying, that the ultimate goal of this whole social media thing has that what I've noticed is the whole credit score in the metaverse. Now, it's a two-part thing, so we'll start with the credit score. I was watching a movie the other day. It's a Marvel movie. I believe it was Captain America, the Winter Soldier. And there was a part in the movie that fascinated me. I'm going to try to be quick with this. So the part in the movie that fascinated me was when I believe Captain America and the Black Widow ended up at this bunker, which he was trained at in the first movie he made. And they go down into the basement to find his AI system. And there's a part in the movie where the AI system made this one little comment. That's not the right word, but he said something where people's, how should I put this? What he was basically saying is that, let's say, like I said, 10 years ago, let's say 10 years till now, people have left a digital footprint. And basically what the artificial intelligence was saying in the movie, because his consciousness got uploaded, so he's technically like an AI, what he was saying is that people's actions that they've done in the past will be used against them for the future. And I remember watching this movie years ago when it first came out. I didn't really pay much attention to that line. But hearing it now, it struck a chord in my mind to that. Wow, that's kind of like how social media is right now, because we've went through this whole social media phase long enough that we've created like a digital footprint for ourselves. That, going back to what I just said, where we have a lot of data on ourselves, the phone knows us more than we know about ourselves, that we don't realize that these information is being used against us. So when the whole, and I personally think there's going to be a social credit score, and it's clear as day that it's going to happen. It has to. I will have another episode going more in depth in that. I already did record something, but I didn't end up releasing it. But I had to redo it because so much has changed since then. So back to what I'm saying. So there's been enough data that's gone on that there has to be a social credit score, which will then now tie into the second part of what I'm saying, which is the metaverse, right? And there's that Black Mirror episode where this girl, I can't remember what episode it was, but if you search through it, or if you ever watch Black Mirror, you know which episode I'm talking about, where the girl had like a social score or something like that. In the show, I can't remember what term they used, but it's basically was a social score based on how nice she is. The next person she meets will give her a rating and stuff like that, and based on her rating, whether she can travel or whatever. And ironically enough, that type of system is used in China. I didn't want to say China in this episode, but it's used there. Now, I'm not sure if it's used in the whole entire country, but it's used in certain provinces there, I would suspect. And it's going to be tied into the whole metaverse situation with the credit score. And the reason why this is that social media and the whole social atmosphere has become the Wild West, and it needs to be regulated in some way. And I think by introducing this social credit score system, that's going to be the way of regulating it, right? And it only makes sense. Like I said, if you take some time to step back and look at the whole situation, it only makes sense. And it's going to tie into this whole, situations where people don't even realize what's actually happening. Like, people who are miserable or probably might not have the right type of score, or people who are very upbeat and want to seek more attention may have a better score. Like, we don't know, but it's going to tie into a lot of things now that you have the whole cryptocurrency and blockchain and everything like that. Money and everything is going to be tied into one. But the whole aspect of what I was saying in this episode is that there is a disorder within the social media atmosphere, and it's going to need to be rectified. And It's going to have to happen sooner rather than later. Now, will it happen within this decade? I want to say yes, but at the same time, I'm not sure. And the reason why I say this is because we're already in 2022, and I believe there's still a long way to go, but the way things have been speeding up every year now, it might happen sooner than we think. But the thing is that I just want to touch on is that there's such a large mental health within this social media realm right now, and it's shaping society in the wrong way. And I wish it stayed the same from when social media first came out. It's everything is always going to change, and you kind of have to embrace change. As I said in the last episode, I believe it was episode 8, yes, Coming of Change. You have to embrace change, but not all change is good. Some change, you kind of have to adapt to it, but you also have to be very cognizant of how you adapt to that change that's coming, because the old world that we once knew before this whole lockdown situation has happened is no longer there. When it all happened, everything shifted online. Everyone's focus, everyone's attention shifted online. So it sort of sped up that whole mental disorder of the social media realm a little bit faster than it should have. And just people need to be very aware of what's happening right now, because we're in unprecedented times. We're in murky waters right now in regards to what this whole situation is. And the next episode I'm going to speak on is not a whole of what's happening right now. It's a good chunk of things that's happening right now, and a lot of it has to do with the changing world that we live in today. And social media has changed dramatically over the years, and I've noticed a lot of people have gotten off of it. And I wish it was easy for me to do that, because obviously in order to function, or not necessarily function, but in order to strive with your business in the world right now, or within society, you kind of need social media, because you have to reach all the people that's out there, because this is where all the eyes are. This is where all your customers or clients are mostly on right now. So you kind of need it. I wish it was easy to just get off of it and not need to use it, but we're at that point where you need it. So my thing is, use it as a tool and don't allow it to use you, because I've noticed a lot of people are allowing it to use them instead of them using the social media platform as a tool, because that's really what it is now. It used to be something that was very useful for like just a quick escape, but now people just literally escape reality just to not think about what is really going on in reality, and they're just lying to themselves when they go on social media. So you kind of have to tread lightly when you're on these things, because you get immersed in it so much that you lose track of what's real and what isn't. I get into a lot more of this in the next episode, not necessarily on social media, but the whole aspect of everything that's happening right now and where things may be going. Again, this is strictly my opinion. I could be wrong. I always say, if you really take a step back and look at the whole aspect of things, you can see the patterns and see things for what they are. It's kind of like when you're in the midst of a storm, you don't know what the damage is until that storm passes. Or if you're from like a higher advantage point, then you can see clearly what's happening. And usually that happens when you're observing instead of being within the storm. So I appreciate anyone who has listened to this episode. Again, this is episode 10, Social Media Disorder. See you in the next episode.